The Power of Agile, hosted by Nagaro.
Welcome back to The Power of Agile, the podcast where we dive deep into principles, practices, and mindset shifts that fuel some of the world's most adaptable and forward-thinking teams. I'm your host, Gurpreet Badesh, and today's episode is Innovation in Motion. We're talking about two words that are driving transformation across industries: agility and innovation. Now more than ever, the need to innovate isn't just a nice to have, it's the difference between staying ahead and getting left behind. But what does it actually take to create a culture where big ideas thrive and new solutions emerge, all while staying adaptable? How can agility serve as a catalyst for real game-changing innovation? Today, we're unpacking all of that and more. We'll explore the strategies, the challenges, and the breakthroughs that come from combining agility with innovation, and hear how leading teams are pushing boundaries, pivoting fast, and turning big ideas into reality. Let's dive in. To walk us through this today, let's welcome Michael Ziermair.
Hey Gurpreet, great to be here. Really looking forward to this conversation.
Lovely, thanks so much. And before we go into the actual detail with this, let's kick it off with a few fun, light-hearted, off-topic questions to get our listeners to get to know you a bit better, if that's okay.
Sure.
Awesome. So first question, if you had to rename your job title to something hilarious yet descriptive, what would it be?
Well, the abbreviation wouldn't be funny. It would be a CFO, but it wouldn't be the Chief Financial Officer. It would be the Chief Firefighting Officer at the moment, which has been my position for the last few weeks. But you learn a lot, and it's quite fun.
Right, so you're putting out fires everywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quite literally.
I love it. And next up, if your life was a reality show, what would it be called? And what would the most dramatic episode be?
Well, it isn't quite a reality show, but for sure it currently feels like the movie Armageddon, where we are trying to get something done, but there is aliens attacking us from everywhere, and we are just trying to get the mission to succeed. So that's what it feels like. It is currently in the midsection of the movie where you as the listener don't just quite know whether or not it turns out well, but we are hopeful.
Oh, you've left us on a cliffhanger there.
Yes.
Okay, great stuff. And finally, how do you keep up with trends and shifts in the industry without losing focus on the big picture?
You know, a lot it has to do with personal interest as well. So obviously everybody has people that they follow online that they think are meaningful in the space. So it's a combination of people that I follow, that share interesting material, proactive searches, Google searches, just stuff that keeps up naturally if you're interested in the subject.
Right, okay. So anything that sparks interest and...
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great insight. So thanks for sharing that. And now let's go into our topic for today, which is innovation and agility. And what I want to do first is just start off with actually understanding the different grades of innovation that you've observed within organizations.
Well, there is a lot because innovation is such a broad topic that everybody talks about. So it's not just that one thing, but we usually classify it to make it more graspable. To use this word is to classify it as 10x, 100x, 1000x. And what we mean by that is you have gradual innovation, meaning you develop a product along its natural life cycle, try to improve it gradually, whether or not it is cost cutting or whether or not it's improving its feature basis for the clients. Then you have 100x where you I'm not talking necessarily about a product, but you're talking about a whole line of products if you're a large corporation, or your most significant product if you are a startup or a mid-sized company. And 1000x would be a disruption that literally transforms the core purpose of your company.
Right.
So, an example would be, think of Nokia, when obviously the shift to smartphone happened, and suddenly your main purpose of being, which was producing the best smartphone in the early 2000s, suddenly became very much attacked by Apple and all of the other Android smartphones that were coming up gradually, who took away the space. And suddenly you have to answer some very, very tough question as to how your purpose as a company shifts.
Mm-hmm. And it seems quite clear-cut that the size of the organization here would play a huge role in that, right? Because,
absolutely.
Yeah. I guess the bigger the company, the more difficult, would you say, it could be?
Well, it honestly depends also. I mean, size obviously does play a role in terms of your budget, but it also plays a role when it comes, or a secondary role that is very important is, what is your standing on the market? Are you an incumbent, somebody that tries to defend the market space?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you somebody that is considered to be a large organization by whatever metric you're using, be it number of employees, be it your annual revenue,
mm-hmm.
but you're still not the most significant player in that space. You're still considered an attacker in that space.
Right, okay. So it's mindset,
think of,
culture.
Xiaomi at the moment, who is obviously an established smartphone producer,
mm-hmm.
but is now attacking the car manufacturing market by bringing out an electric car.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So they come with the backing of a large organization, but
yeah.
move into a space that they're not known for.
Okay, so it's really challenging the status quo,
yes.
as I understand it. Okay.
So it's very, very important when we talk about innovation to put it into context of the organization itself,
mm-hmm.
the market space, and the degree of innovation as opposed to where you're starting.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Okay, I'm sure we'll get more
mm-hmm.
into this, right? So based on when you first start engaging with clients,
mm-hmm.
do you tend to see any kind of blockers, any patterns, for example, regarding innovation and agility?
Mm-hmm. This is quite a broad question, and it's very often innovation can come from different aspects. And what I mean by that is, when we are approached by clients, it's not always that a department specifically always approaches us.
Mm-hmm.
So it could be that the business is thinking of developing a new line of product, or is starting some innovation agenda that they want to push. So that they obviously have the focus of, hey, I would like to cut costs, or I would like to increase my revenue by doing X.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously they have this perspective, but they usually do not have the perspective of IT, of architecture, of the whole technical concept that needs to be around that idea that they're having. So the conversation in that case obviously is flowing very naturally when it comes to business and revenue and business cases,
mm-hmm.
but usually it turns to be very difficult when obviously you have to onboard the entire IT department, and then it becomes a challenge of how far do I go before I involve the rest of the organization.
Right.
But we also see different approaches. So secondary approach is that the technical departments are very much focused on the technology.
Mm-hmm.
AI is a very good example of this, where seemingly you walk around with the idea of a technology, and you're really trying to find problems that which you can apply to.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this hammer and nail situation where if you have a hammer, everything is a nail.
Yep. Yep.
So you're trying to find use cases where you can apply the technology. And then the conversation may differ, because suddenly you're coming with a technology,
mm-hmm.
and you're trying to talk to the business and identify whether or not or how they can use it.
And do you also find that organizations might, for example, force bringing an idea to life based on a particular technology that they want to use? Like, well, they're kind of stuck to that, glued mm-hmm. to that idea.
This is very common more with larger organizations,
mm-hmm.
where you have individuals, and it's not always that you can identify them on the hierarchical charts, but these are individuals that have internally a good network,
mm-hmm.
are very much focused on the technology, and are trying to convince, in a positive sense, the rest of the organization about the potential of this technology. And very often what happens in those cases is that the technology in those conversations is suddenly much, much more important than the actual problem we're trying to solve.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes away the space in which we adequately assess if there is not another way, technologically speaking, or even processually speaking, not everything is solved by technology necessarily, how we can improve that situation. So what we tend to do is always circle back. It's okay if you have a technology in mind where you think it can add value, but it's always important to circle back and say, what is the fundamental problem we're trying to solve? Why is it a problem in the first place? Are we losing money? Could we make more money? Usually it's those two levels, obviously. And how does the problem define itself in terms of what are the interactions that cause the problem or the lack of efficiency? So it starts with the process. It starts with all of the involved systems. It starts with the shareholders, stakeholders that are involved in the problem. And then it breaks down to technology.
Right.
And if you evaluate all of those factors, then you can have a much more objective view on the problem. And you can then define, would this application of this technology help? And could other technologies or other methods be applied?
And you've got more flexibility with that as well.
Yeah.
Because you're really looking at it holistically and approaching it and thinking, okay,
Exactly.
let's go back to basics and address this.
Yep.
Has there been cases where you've seen a change over time, for example? So you've mentioned, like, for example, you've seen quite a few cases where clients are married to the idea of a specific technology, for example, right? Post as you've worked with them over time, how have you seen that change?
It changes, and the thing is, what we try to do is be proactive about it, because in the end, if the technology isn't a good fit for the problem, it will anyway turn out to be, or what I mean by that is, you will anyway see it reflected on the balance sheet, because you cannot reap the benefits that you have anticipated in your business case.
Right.
So obviously, it is doomed to fail from the start, so to speak. So that's why it's important to bring in that perspective from the get-go, to have basically workshops where we go through the problem statement, as I said, and layer on the technology side, and also bring input to demystify the technology as well. Because very often, if we talk about technologies like AI, it used to be AR and VR, so assisted, augmented, virtual reality in the past, where there's a lot of myths what it can do already, and what its potential might be in the future. And it's very important to know where the technology currently stands and where its potential is in the future, so that you make the best decision now.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That's a really good point that you mentioned. And so thinking about how agility can actually supercharge innovation. Have you got any stories where clients have seen a huge difference? They've seen the benefits, especially in cases where speed was critical.
Yeah, absolutely. So even from my own examples, so this is a few years ago, obviously, when assisted and augmented reality was very, very new. It still is new, obviously, but at that time, we're talking 2018, 19. We talked to a client who wanted to improve his processes when, inspecting goods, so buses, antennas, different objects. And it was a very manual process, and it was a process that was very heavy on documentation, obviously. And since you're out in the field, you can't have a laptop with you, and even if you pull out your phone, there's a lot of manual labor you have to do. So we thought about, hey, let's use the glasses. Let's use smart glasses. So obviously the person can work hands-free, the person can record videos, audio, images, whatever he needs, so that obviously the documentation process is reduced. And since this technology was so new at the time, there was a lot of assumptions on what it can do. So for instance, we could do calling. So basically somebody could sit in an office somewhere. I'm laying somewhere in the outskirts of town underneath a heavy machine, and you would just be calling me, and I can show you what I'm doing, and you could instruct me on how to do my work.
Right.
And we were very glad that we used a rapid prototyping approach where we tried it out in the field, because then we realized very early problems like you do not have connectivity underneath a heavy piece of machinery because it's a Faraday cage, and naturally, whatever we do, we will never manage to create a situation where we can guarantee that we would have the infrastructure in place that this would work. So yes, in our offices it worked brilliantly well, but that wasn't the use case. The use case was you're out in the field, somewhere in the middle of nowhere, and this is where rapid prototyping comes in. Despite our best efforts from the client side, from our side, to understand the technology, to anticipate any problems that we might have, we knew we had to do a rapid prototyping approach to really try and see it, because you can never anticipate all of the factors when you are talking a very disruptive innovation, at least.
Yeah. So you get to see the applicability. Yes. It's equivalent of doing a pilot, right?
Yes, exactly.
And with this rapid prototyping, is there a set structured approach which you follow, or is it customizable?
We usually customize it to a degree, but there is like 2 to 3 steps that should always be followed, and they're very logically as well. So first, as I've mentioned multiple times before, is you really have to understand the problem statement, and how the problem works. So basically, what can I change to make it more efficient? So once I understand that, and this is typically done in a workshop setting, we brainstorm technology and solutions, and we decide on one solution. So usually that's step 1.
Okay.
Step 2 is then to identify what is the bare minimum that we have to do. And nowadays there's beautiful technologies out there who can do that. We're talking low code. We're talking basically click dummies that you can do since forever anyway, since the last 10 years or so. So there's a multitude of ways to make a very, very quick prototype, kind of a throwaway solution that you can deploy on a smartphone or whatever piece of technology you're intending to use. And then you go out in the field. So step 2 is create the quickest prototype possible based on the design. Step 3 is go out into the real world, or whatever the context of your problem statement is, and try it out.
Okay.
And very importantly here, and this is a mistake that is very commonly made, and I quite frankly don't know why, is use the people who are actually doing the job. So even if you're from the same company, especially in large organizations, you sometimes think you understand what the job is that the person does, but there is a lot of intricacies that are not readily apparent when you read the job description.
There's also a lot of experience that they have, right? Yes. Which they've done a lot of learning through their mistakes, for example. They've seen failures, probably ones that you wouldn't see otherwise unless you did the role. And
also they have found shortcuts.
Right.
So obviously, especially when we talk about large organizations, they do have a process roadmap. They know what the process is. But humans are naturally, and I say this with no disrespect towards anybody, humans tend to be lazy. So we try to optimize. So yes, the written down process might ask me to do step 1, step 2, and then step 3. But I might have figured out that in my specific context, I can just skip step 2 or kind of parallelize it, to not do them sequentially, but do them in parallel, and then I will save some time. If I don't know that when designing the solution, I'm building something that makes you better in theory, but makes you worse in practice.
Yeah, because you could go on and on, right?
Exactly. So that that's why it's so important to use actually those employees who are actively doing the job and who can tell you about the variety that they have in their job as well.
Okay. And on the flip side then, so is there a point at which being too agile can hamper innovation? Or like, for example, if you're having to innovate quite often, right, it's causing the team to pivot frequently.
So this is also a very interesting point, and this is where context plays in so massively, because here we don't only have to take in what we said before about the size of the organization, about the context of the organization in terms of business model, in terms of standing in the industry. We also have to take in the culture of the organization.
Yeah.
So how much is the organization used to change? And I give you a very vivid example. So very often, and again, I'm now talking large organization again, you take out people partially out of their job to say, hey, you will be my expert to help out in innovation project X. And in that project, you will give the insights from your expertise. So for instance, if we do a solution for an accounting team, you will have an accountant who is doing this on a daily basis, and he will give input to that team. But we are forcing now that person to do is you take a person out of a job like accounting who is very much focused on not making mistakes, because obviously nobody wants an accountant that books willy-nilly because it's agile and quick, and if there's a mistake, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Their whole mindset is hyper-focused on not making mistakes, on double and triple checking results.
Attention to detail.
Exactly. Yeah. And putting that person in a workshop where we say, hey, don't worry about it. There's no bad ideas. Just free flow, whatever comes to your mind. We will sort it out later. That person cannot physically discern themselves from however long their experience in accounting was.
It's totally foreign to them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they will never just blurt out an idea because it's not what they do on a regular basis. And there's tons of other examples, audits, engineers, they are all trained in a way where mistakes are pivotal. And it should be. So we have to be very careful when we say, hey, we will just staff somebody to an innovation project. We have to make sure either we remove them completely, but then you have to talk about very large projects where, the budgets would allow for you to remove a person.
Yeah.
And we are also talking about you have to get those people who really understand the job. So very often you're talking about exactly those people who really run the show on a day-to-day basis. And if you take them out of the day-to-day business, then you're obviously hampering, in the very short term, your day-to-day operations, most likely. Because you're taking out key people.
So it's like a trade-off.
Exactly.
It's almost like a trade-off against your day-to-day operations versus innovation. Okay. I never thought of it that way, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. And so with this trade-off now, right, with this trade-off in mind, in the age of AI, it's a hot topic right now. The pace of change is really difficult to keep up with. So how do you think this impacts innovation based on what you've seen?
So obviously it comes with a lot of advantages, because if applied well, AI can accelerate the rapid prototyping, because it helps you, when we talk about applications of AI in coding, for instance. So we're now using low code, which has rapidly transformed the coding space, especially when we talk about prototyping. AI can do a similar thing with even less knowledge base required for that person who is trying or attempting to build a low code solution. So that could be a huge accelerator. Obviously, AI is also going to be very impactful, or is already very impactful in creating a holistic overview of the technological capabilities of the industry standings, so that you can make more concrete decisions based on the facts that are presented to you. And it makes it a lot easier to get this overview, bird's eye view of all of the factors that you need to consider when designing a solution.
So what you're essentially saying is it's all about how you use AI.
Yes.
In a smart way.
Yeah.
Right.
And again, there's a huge craze about AI, and the same has happened in the .com bubble, where clearly the technology is here to stay. We are seeing tremendously interesting applications of AI. And there is experts who can talk years and years and years of all the possible applications and how it will transform every industry. But the same was true for the internet. And we know that, obviously. We're doing this podcast over the internet. But still, that doesn't mean that every AI that is currently generated, or every AI use case that is currently generated, is meant or will be able to stand on its own two legs in the near term. So we will see a lot of AI startups go bust. We will see a lot of AI use cases work out in the long run when we take a 10, 15, 20-year perspective, but it will not work out in the immediate future. And I would anticipate a similar situation that we had in the dot-com bubble, where tons of money are now poured in, and a handful of companies or use cases will emerge extremely strong and dictate the space for a long time to come. And obviously an ecosystem will build around those.
Right, okay. So it's almost like we're going to go through this cleansing phase, would you say? Yeah.
I would very much assume so, yeah.
Okay. Interesting. And final question then. Have you ever heard of analysis paralysis?
Yes. This is usually why we do rapid prototyping, because in the end, on a sheet of paper, we can forever brainstorm the pros and cons of a solution.
Yeah.
And obviously, once again, size of the innovation and risks involved matter. So if we're talking about a 10x innovation, analysis paralysis should, in a well thought out process, should not happen, because the risks are involved in producing a new features in a 10x innovation are comparatively minimal. So you obviously design the solution or the new feature set to a degree that is satisfactory or that meets your quality standards, and then you ship it. And if you see, the clients are not responding to it well, you analyze, course correct, you go on. Yes, it's not great, but this is something where you can learn very quickly. As we go on to larger and larger innovations, obviously the sweet spot becomes more difficult to hit. And this is where sizing comes in as well. So we talked a lot before about how the problem actually works. And obviously a problem can be something where I want to transform major parts of my company with the use of AI, for instance, but I don't have to do it all at once. So I can analyze and cluster the problems that I have and say, okay, these are the areas where I will use AI for internal efficiency. These are the areas where we can improve our product offering. And then we cluster and kind of create a whole portfolio around those. And then we pick and choose the most tantalizing bits first. Tantalizing meaning they have the highest likelihood of success that we see. And we kind of try those out first, learn about the technology, learn about the applicability, and then reassess whether or not this changes anything in our roadmap. Right.
So what you're saying is that basically when agile teams have a wealth of data or real-time insights at their fingertips, what they should do is actually, to an extent, compartmentalize and see, okay, where the big wins are, and then focus on, hey, let's focus on this and reap the benefits and see if that worked well, and if not, change.
Yeah, exactly. So basically you prioritize based on what is the potential success that I can reap, so in terms of revenue, in terms of cost cutting, what is the amount of effort I have to put in to kind of prove or disprove my theory. Then you find the sweet spot within the two. So kind of a compromise between those two factors. You try it out, you learn, and either you learn, hey, my initial assumptions were true, so I can now kind of work through my portfolio that I've built of ideas.
Right.
I constantly reassess whether or not that hypothesis is still true, whether or not I have categorized my ideas correctly. Or very often you learn, hey, I have grossly overestimated about the efficiencies I can gain here, or I have maybe even grossly underestimated what the technology can do, and it can do much more. And now suddenly some other ideas are growing in value, because with the additional use cases that I can cover, I suddenly have a lot more benefit on the revenue side.
I see. Okay. Well, that's it's been really interesting. That concludes this episode. So, Michael, thank you for sharing insights into innovation and agility. It has been really insightful as a conversation.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And for our listeners out there, if you've enjoyed the ride, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Your feedback means everything to us. And before we part ways, let's recap some key takeaways from today's episode.
Yeah, sure. So my key takeaway that I always tell to clients is make sure that the people who are involved in your innovative project come with a mindset that allows them to think freely, to be error prone, and allow people some time to adjust to an environment where you have free thinking capabilities and you can just let the ideas flow, and then afterwards you will assess.
Absolutely. That's a really good one as well. And for me, the biggest thing was how it's so important not to focus on the technology that you plan to use, but more around what do you want to achieve? Where do you want to get to? And focus on the process of how you're going to get there, right? So put technology to one side for now, focus on the end goal and start with that. So thank you once again, Michael, for joining us. And to our listeners, if you have any burning questions, please send an email to aqt@nagaro.com or connect with us on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay agile, stay innovative, and keep pushing those boundaries.